Hey everyone. Hope you've had a nice weekend. So lately I've been hitting Randy Feenstra pretty hard on his voting record, and rightly so. And I've been wondering when his campaign would start hitting back, and it looks like this weekend they finally did. So someone just sent me his latest attack ad, which tries to paint me as a New Yorker. It's pretty hilarious seeing my picture next to AOC and Chuck Schumer, but let's get past that and dive into that content. So first things first, I've never made it a secret that I lived in New York before coming back to Iowa to run for Congress. I've said from the beginning, once I found out about the carbon pipeline scam that Feenstra has worked so hard to support, and I saw just how bad his voting record was, I asked everyone I knew, including former Congressman Steve King, when someone would announce a primary campaign against Feenstra. And it wasn't until December of last year that it became apparent no one was going to step up and do it. Now, believe me, I would have been more than happy to let someone else run a primary, but I couldn't stand back and let a man who pretends to be a conservative, who's afraid to meet his voters, and routinely sells out his constituents while protecting his big corporate donors to serve for another term. So at the end of last year, I moved back to Iowa and announced a run against him. And I also think it's hilarious how Feenstra's political consultants dug through my social media accounts and found a 4-year-old post where I mentioned Chuck Schumer. Now, I'm going to read it to you. Now, bear in mind, this was during the initial economic shock of COVID. And Schumer had said, quote, "One of the reasons industries are so short on cash right now is that they've spent billions buying back their own stocks instead of investing in their workers and saving for a rainy day." Now, I responded, quote, "I never thought I would say this, but Schumer is right. The U.S. cannot withstand another corporate bailout that leaves Main Street in the lurch. This is why revolutions happen. Wipe out the shareholders, recap the company so workers stay on the job, and start over." Now, unless you're the CEO of one of those low-performing companies, I'm going to guess you agree with everything that I just said. And I stand by what I said. I profoundly disagree with just about everything Senator Schumer says on a daily basis, but in this case, I have to hand it to him that he was right to criticize corporate welfare. But as usual, Randy Feenstra is deceiving you by only extracting 4 words of that post, "Chuck Schumer was right," instead of telling you exactly what I said. And frankly, that approach is vintage Randy. He covers up the truth and misleads you because he doesn't want his voters to know exactly how bad his voting record is. But that's okay. It's my job to show you, which is why my team publishes information almost every day about how he spent the past 3 years selling out Iowa farmers and communities while supporting his big corporate donors. And as long as we're talking about New York, here's a fun fact. I may have lived there for a while, but you want to know who else lives there? It's Randy Feenstra's biggest donors. Did you know that Feenstra's campaign raises $2 out of state for every dollar inside Iowa? And that his campaign spends $4 out of state for every dollar he spends here? In fact, he's raised more money from New York than any other state except for Iowa. And while it's easy to poke fun at New York, I should probably point out that their Republican members of Congress actually vote with the Constitution more often than Randy Feenstra does. In fact, Feenstra scored a miserable 50 points out of 100, according to the Republican Liberty Caucus, worse than half of all New York Republican members. Maybe he'd be a better fit for the people of that state. And then finally, I want to address his claim that I haven't voted in Iowa since 1992. Now that's true, and as usual, here's the context, and here's why. I graduated high school in the early 90s, and I went to New York, that is, to West Point, because I wanted to serve my country. Now, if that's something that Feenstra wants to criticize, then it says a lot more about him than it does about me. And I would welcome the opportunity to debate him on this topic in multiple debates and find out how he really feels about military service, given that he never actually served himself. So I have 2 responses for Randy Feenstra. First, you're welcome. Second, I welcome the opportunity to debate you, Randy, and to give you the opportunity to tell the voters exactly how you feel about military service and a host of other issues. I want 3 debates with you over the next 2 months between now and the primary. No notes, no earpieces, just 2 people talking. I'll do it whenever and wherever you want. And then lastly, to the voters. I've been all across this district for the past few months, and I've been very candid about the fact that I lived in New York. Now, if you have a problem with that, I respect it, but I have Iowa in my blood. I grew up here after all, and I chose to come back here and represent you in Congress because we no longer have a representative that respects the Constitution. Now, I used to run a business, and I believe in key performance indicators as a way to track performance. Now, my KPI is going to be that Republican Liberty Caucus score that tracks how well members of Congress vote with the Constitution. And my goal is to score a perfect 100. I'm not here to represent Big Ag or any other corporate donor. I'm here to fight for your property rights and to return dignity to rural America and respect the Constitution. If you have any doubts about me or what I stand for, I would encourage you to go to my campaign website at virgilforcongress.com and find an event near you where you can meet me in person and see for yourself. And I would also encourage you to look at all the information that we're publishing about Randy Feenstra's voting record. Trust me, you're going to be surprised, and unfortunately, not in a good way. And don't take my word for it. As always, do your own research. Now, I lived outside of Iowa for a long time, and I've learned a lot. I've served our nation for over a decade in some hazardous jobs. I've traveled to over 70 countries, and I've seen firsthand the best and worst that our federal government has to offer. And while I was serving my country, your current congressman was selling candy in Northwest Iowa. Now, there's nothing wrong with that, but you know how badly our country is suffering today, with crises everywhere from our economy to foreign policy to rampant crime and corporate cronyism. So I ask you, between the two of us, which of those backgrounds and experiences do you think will create the kind of leader that this country needs right now? So I think the best way to find out is to have an open and honest debate. So Randy, are you up for it?